Hey, what is up, guys? It is Silverson here, and right now, like just a couple minutes ago, I just saw a Tale of Two Stands, so I might not get everything in this review, but I'll hopefully get most. And this episode was hyped up, like all the way. Everyone was like excited for it. I was excited for it, but let's see if it did live up to the hype. So pretty much before the intro comes in, we see, young Stanford, young Stanley, and all that. They're just like palling around, and pretty much it's at that part they find like this spooky little cave, and then pretty much they're just like talking about like how different they are. Like Stanford, I believe, is the smart one, and Stanley was the tough one and stuff. And so pretty much they go into the cave and they write their name on it, and then the intro plays. And this time the intro is actually normal, like it's the whole intro and stuff like that. But there's no commercials that I saw. There wasn't any commercials for at least the first viewing. I'm pretty sure later with reruns they're gonna show the commercials. But yeah, this episode started off right where the last episode ended, pretty much Stanford coming out of the portal and Stanley and all of them just watching him. And I was suspecting that there was probably gonna fight like right when he came out, and that was somewhat true actually. And surprisingly, Stanford actually kind of beat him. Like he stopped him a bit. He like just punched him pretty much, and then they just fought a bit, and then so pretty much he gets like introduced to Mabel and them and stuff like that, Dipper, and then Dipper's just like going crazy as all of us were and stuff like that, and it was like pretty funny actually. And so pretty much everyone's like just excited, and then they're just talking about their family a lot and stuff like that, and then so they pretty much just turn on Stan for a minute. Well, Stanley to be specific. Now, sorry if I forget a few things in this flashback and all that stuff. It's just I just saw it and it was a lot of information to take in and stuff like that, but I'll try my best, guys. So pretty much it's still in their childhood and stuff like that, and it's pretty much just like showing them building this boat, and they pretty much have like this dream to like sail around the world together or something like that. And then so pretty much while they're building it, these guys come over and then they're just like bullying Stanford, and then Stanley's sort of just like saying like, nah, don't let them get to you and stuff like that, and then pretty much it kind of speeds up the flashback a little bit until they're like teenagers and stuff like that. And I was most of the like speculation we've been doing, or at least the speculation that I've been doing on this episode, was pretty much true, and all that stuff. Like all the things I was thinking that were gonna happen actually did happen. So that was pretty cool to see. So pretty much it just speeds up the flashback a bit, and then like it goes into like their teenage years when they're in high school and stuff like that. And so pretty much like they get called up to the principal's office, and then Stanley has to like wait outside, at the door and stuff like that. And then Stanford goes in, and then pretty much it's nothing bad. It's just saying like, Stanford's doing really good in school, and he might have a chance to get into a good college and all that stuff. And then Stanley's pretty much hearing this, and then they're all just like hating on him. They're thinking like, nah, he's not gonna do anything good in his life and all that stuff. And I was suspecting that too from the trailers and all that stuff, from the things I've seen. I was thinking that too, and it actually happened. And so pretty much, and then after that, I believe it's like there's this science fair going on, and pretty much Stanford's in it, obviously, and he's pretty much making this project and stuff like that. And so Stanley's pretty much like just sad because his brother might go to a good college and stuff like that, and they might not, be able to live their dream and stuff like that, sailing around the world and all that stuff. And so pretty much he's just like wandering through the school in the science fair and stuff like that, and then he finds Stanford's machine, his project, and then so he pretty much just like accidentally breaks it, and then he tries to fix it a bit, which is kind of fixed, but then when the science fair comes, it's not fixed, and pretty much they're just like saying like, oh, that's a terrible project and stuff like that. And so pretty much he's just like he steps on this bag of like toffee peanuts, which is pretty much like Stanley's favorite snack and stuff like that. And so pretty much he sees this, and then he gets mad, so he goes back home, and we actually get to see their mom and stuff like that, which I wasn't sure like what that was about. Like she just didn't look like how I'd imagine and stuff like that. And well, I'm not gonna get into it right now, but there was this little theory thing that people were saying, I believe, and they were saying stuff like, oh, there must be a third brother and stuff like that. But we'll get to that in a second. So pretty much Stanley, yes, Stanley's pretty much just like saying he's sorry and stuff like that, like it was an accident and stuff like that. And Stanford's just like, no, you messed up my project and all that stuff. And then his dad comes in and then he pretty much just like kicks him out of the house. And while he's kicking him out, you can see like a baby, another baby in his mom's arms. So I'm not sure like if that's like another brother or something. Like I don't know. It wasn't really talked about. It was just there. And so pretty much Stanford's just kicked out and stuff like that. And so pretty much he just has to go and like pretty much he just like thinks like, oh, I'm just gonna make a whole bunch of money and stuff like that, so that then I could get back, so that then I can prove to them that I'm not, worthless and all that stuff. So pretty much it starts up like, his whole like conning days and stuff like that, where he like pretty much scams people and he makes all these, um, quick little, he makes like these quick schemes to like, get money fast and all that stuff, and it kind of doesn't really work out for him because later, he starts to like, get worse and worse. Like he's living in like motels and stuff like that. He barely has much money. While Stanford, on the other hand, is pretty much going to his dream college, like he wanted to, and pretty much by now they're pretty much just like separated, obviously, because his college, his university, it's like across the world, like literally. I don't know why, but it just is, and pretty much they're just separated literally and all that stuff. And so Stanford is pretty much doing pretty well. Like, he's in college, he's getting good grades and stuff like that. He's getting all this money and everything. And then Stanley's pretty much just like living in like cars and like motels and stuff like that until Stanford's like studying like all the things in Gravity Falls at this point. Pretty much he's making the journals and stuff like that. And Dipper, does that whole screaming thing. He does it twice actually, which I thought was pretty funny, and I'm sure most of us were doing that too. And so pretty much he's just like cataloging everything, like all the things that we've pretty much seen throughout the series. He's pretty much writing it down and stuff like that. And so he actually finds Schmebulok, but it's like Schmebulok Senior. I don't know what that's about, but I mean it's something. I mean I'm not really sure. I know a couple of people were talking about that, but I'm not sure like what's the big fuss about it. So pretty much he's making all these things, and then while he's writing them, he's pretty much thinking about like there must be some kind of way, that all this stuff is like coming from, like where all this stuff is coming from, and like he just wants to make a machine that leads like a gateway to like this world to, the I don't know what it's called, but it's pretty much like a weirder dimension, the universe portal. That's pretty much what he's making, and then so he pretty much calls up Fiddleford. They were in college together actually. It didn't really show them, but pretty much it just said he was and stuff like that. And so pretty much he tries to help him make the pole and stuff like that. And then while he's doing it, he gets snagged in. He gets sucked in by the rope, and it was like pretty intense this part. And as we know from Society of the Blind Eye, he went crazy from this, and it shows like when he got pulled out of the machine, he was pretty much saying like a backwards message, and he said some kind of rhyme about Bill Cipher. I forgot. He said like something about one eye, so I was guessing it's probably Bill, if anyone, and stuff like that. And so pretty much he's just like saying like, no, like you can't go do that portal and stuff like that, like it's too crazy and everything. So pretty much he just quit, and then Stanford's just like, okay, I don't need you and stuff like that. And that's pretty much when he's like mostly alone by himself. He doesn't have Stanley, he doesn't have Fiddleford, he doesn't really have anyone. And same with Stanford too. Like, oh wait, I get confused with these guys, man. Stanley, I'm pretty sure that's the one. And pretty much he's just like, he gets a letter by this point, I believe, from Stanford saying like to come over and all that stuff. And there was this actually now that I think about it, a bit before when Stanford was going to Gravity Falls, when he found Gravity Falls and stuff like that, pretty much Stanley tried to call his brother. He tried to call Stanford because he just needed help. He didn't have much money and stuff like that. And then pretty much he called him and he picked up, and then he's just like he just hung up. Not Stanford, Stanley. He hung up because I don't know. He was just afraid to talk to him and stuff like that. And so, but going forward a bit forward to now, pretty much Stanford's just pretty much freaking out at this point and stuff like that. He's pretty much just like scared. He wasn't specifically scared about Bill Cipher like I saw it, at least I don't think. But that could have been a part of it, and that's why I'm telling y'all, Bill, like, it's just all about Bill. Like, most of it's just caused by him and stuff like that. And so pretty much he's just like going crazy, and then Stan Lee comes by, and then he's pretty much just looking, at the house and stuff like that, and then he goes in, and then Stanford pretty much just like comes out with like a crossbow, and he's like about to kill him, and then yeah, it's mostly just played for laughs. It wasn't too serious, but pretty much he goes in and he has all these like weird experiments in the house and stuff like that, and he's just like saying like what's going on with you and stuff like that. You're acting crazy and everything, and then he's just like nah, like I need to show you something and stuff like that. So he pretty much shows him the portal and everything, and then he's just like, nah, this is craziness. Like this is actually where the episode sort of like kicks up a bit, like in terms of conflict. I'm not specifically sure what they were arguing about. I know that they were arguing about something important. Uh, Pretty much. Uh, I'm lost a bit because I just saw it and I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, now I think I remember what they were arguing about. They were pretty much just arguing about, from what I remember, like about their lives. Like Stanley was saying, like, "Oh no, your life is much better than mine. You have all this money and you have like these machines and all that stuff. Your life is so much better than mine." And then Stanley's just like, "No, like they were pretty much just talking about all the bad things they did to each other, like, when he ruined his science experiment and all that stuff, and pretty much Stanford." By the end of it, I think before it, I'm getting confused, but eventually he does give him journal number one, and that's how we got it. And there's a couple things that I'm missing that, it just makes sense with this episode. I know I'm forgetting some, but maybe y'all could comment down below and just tell me if I'm missing anything in this episode. But yeah, pretty much he gives him journal number one, and he's saying, like, it's really important, like, you're the only one I can trust now, and stuff like that. And then he's just like, and then he pretty much just tries to burn the book first and stuff like that. And so pretty much Stanford's just like, no, you can't do that and everything. And then they're fighting, and pretty much while they're fighting, the portal turns on, and then pretty much Stanford gets sucked in, obviously, and then Stanley's just like, no, and all that stuff. And so when that happens, pretty much uh, he goes out into like the town to get money and food and all that stuff because, he doesn't really have money still and all that stuff. And so pretty much he goes in and we see like all the characters, but in the past, like way in the past, like you saw Lady Susan, Toby Determined, I think was his name, that guy. You see him as a kid and all that stuff. And pretty much he goes into the store and then he's about to pay for something, but then he can't, because he doesn't have money. And then everyone's saying like, oh, aren't you, Stanford, that weird guy that does all the experiments and stuff like that. And then pretty much he's like denying this at first, but then he's just like, wait, yeah, and stuff like that. And so pretty much that's when he starts to make the mystery shack. Like he starts turning his home into the mystery shack and stuff like that. And so it was pretty cool actually to see, it changing and stuff like that, evolving. And so pretty much it just goes up to the modern day and everything. And then when this happens, it pretty much just shows, it goes back to the government guys, because I forgot to mention this too. They were pretty much just like at the beginning of the episode, sort of, when they were talking about the flashback and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny because Seuss, he pretty much says like the same thing that I said. Like he said he forgot about the government guys, and it's true. I forgot about them too. They're not too important actually. Pretty much what people were speculating was like, oh, they're gonna erase their memories, and they did. Pretty much they just used like, I don't know what they did, but they pretty much erased everyone's mind. Not with Dipper, not with the memory erasing gun. That didn't happen, but they did erase their memories and stuff like that. He did use the gun, but he didn't like point it directly at them. So pretty much they erase their memories and stuff like that, and they leave the house and everything. And then pretty much when that happens, Stanford and Stanley just like start talking, catching up a bit and stuff like that, just joking around a little. And then pretty much he's just like, well, Stanford, yes. Get confused with these guys. So Stanford's pretty much just like, by the end of the summer, I want you to turn back, the shack. Like I don't want the mystery shack. I don't want like, you changing it and all that stuff. I want everything to go back to normal and everything. And then pretty much Stanford, well, Stanley's pretty much just like, all right, fine, I'll do that. But if you like promise to stay away from the kids, because remember, he wants to protect them and stuff like that. He doesn't want them, getting all mixed up in this whole, mystery sort of stuff. And so pretty much that happens. And while that's happening, pretty much Dipper and Mabel are talking, and they're just saying like, what if we turn out like them? How they did. They started bickering and arguing, but then just like, nah, I don't think that's gonna really happen and stuff like that. And the end credits is kind of funny. It's just Zeus talking to Wendy about what happened because Wendy wasn't there for reasons, I guess. But yeah, pretty much he's just saying it, and he sounds like it's funny. He sounds almost like one of the fans or something like that. Like he's just saying like so. He was like getting kind of confused. He was saying like so Stanford was really Stanley and all that stuff, and then he was pretty much just like telling her that, and then the episode ends with the code and stuff like that with 6 fingers. I didn't decode the code, but I'm sure other people will. But that was pretty much the episode, and I really feel like it lived up to the hype in my opinion. I thought it was a really good episode, and it was just really